Okay, so firstly, thank you for staying behind for what could be the dullest title for the talk. I always give titles and then look later and think, why did I choose that title? So thank you for sticking with this. Yeah, my name is Richard Pugh. I'm the Chief Data Scientist at Mango, and I'm also the President of the EARL Consortium. And I'm going to talk a little bit about data science and what a data scientist looks like. I'm also going to try and introduce, or I've kind of used that as a way of leveraging some cool, shiny stuff. So that's kind of how I've done it. So very quickly, the agenda. I'm going to talk about data science and the view from the sort of Mango camp. I'm going to talk about something called the data science radar. I'm going to talk about building the unicorn, some collaborative stuff, some tech stuff, and some futures. So let me start off with data science. So I did a study recently where I had to tell someone what data science was, and I thought I'd start by looking at data science job adverts. So I stripped a lot of job adverts, and essentially I found some really weird results, which essentially comes down to it's ridiculously an abused term already. So I found job adverts where you had to essentially be perfect in about 10 different technologies, including whatever the latest Apache incubator project is, right? And then I found a lot of job adverts which were like, I want a senior data scientist, technology requirements, Excel. And so it was like, it was really weird. So what we all need is another talk about what a data scientist is. So I'm just about to get away with that, I think. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a data scientist, and of course in doing that talk about what is data science. So I thought I'd start off really with some of the tweets that people kind of answer this question with, which I kind of like. This was one of the, I think this is Josh Wills, who said that a data scientist is a statistician who lives in San Francisco, which kind of has some truth in it. Big data Borat, obviously got to include, right? So apparently data science is just statistics, but on a Mac. Which is kind of cool. I quite like this one. This is Corey Chivers. He said a data scientist is a device for turning coffee and data into decisions, essentially, which is kind of cool. And I think probably the famous one, maybe, where we start to see some sensible stuff is Josh Wills. I think this is probably the most popular one I've seen kind of on Twitter, which is a data scientist is a person who is better at stats than a software engineer and better software engineer than a statistician. And I've kind of seen that a lot, and you know, and actually you can extend this further. I'm sure people have seen Drew Conway's diagram, which kind of goes further. And essentially, a lot of the what is a data scientist thing tends to involve the overlapping of different areas in some way. So Drew came up with this diagram, which has been much kind of used, and he talks about it's a crossover between experience, hacking, and stats, essentially. And also, he warned about the other areas like danger zones. So you got experience and you got hacking. You know, no maths, but you're going to fix the models. That's dangerous. So what's the Mango view? Well, we've kind of got a weird view on this because when we set up Mango 13 years ago, we started going to companies and say, we want to do analytics, but like for business. And they thought we were weird, essentially. So we've kind of been trying to kind of get really applied analysts for years. And I'm the sort of statistician many years ago when I started in industry who would automate themselves out of work. And Ashwin was kind of similar to me in that you kind of get some analysis to do. And instead of actually doing the analysis, you write all the code that means the analysis is kind of like automated. And then your job is suddenly reduced to hitting that function with a different parameter over and over again. I did that a lot. Okay. So our view goes back to 1998. In 1998, a few things happened. France won the World Cup. This group called the Spice Girls released something called Wannabe as a new song. And I was just straight out of university, took my first stats job, which will make you feel very old very quickly, or you look at me and go, wow, you're that old. Right, okay. But yeah, that was my first job as a statistician, you know, kind of ambitious, sat down, I'm going to change the world. And I got into my stats job, and I realized there were a few things missing from my degree. Things like, well, domain knowledge. You couldn't have taught me about domain knowledge at that time, to be fair. And I worked in the pharma industry, right? So you couldn't have done a whole course on the pharma industry during my degree course. I get that. How to be a programmer was a shock. I kind of knew when I left university that in order to do analysis, I'd need to be able to use software in some way. But when you sit at your desk and say, oh, you know, in university, and like you did all the analysis bit, well, here's the like all the stuff you have to do before you even get to that point, right? So I sat down, was told to learn SAS very quickly, essentially. I had to work out how to create a good graph, how to communicate results, how to explain models. stupid stuff like how to produce documents that actually conform to the corporate style and all that sort of stuff that you never think about, right? But there's a lot of stuff that was getting in my way. But the biggest thing I found as a statistician in industry at that time was that I was very much a reactive analyst. What that means, really, at the time, and I've kind of seen this in other industries as well, is we were the kind of like audit team. The company was doing analytics, frankly, because they had to, really. They had to confirm, or they had to provide regulatory evidence, or something like that, right? So I was doing analysis, and my group were doing analysis because we had to do it. We were told to do it. So it felt a little bit like, all the decisions were made over one side of the organization, and then we were in this like room, all the geeks are at the back there, don't talk to them, just feed little bits of work into the letterbox, and they'll pop out a little Word document for you, and that's it. And it was a really weird thing. And the way I used to explain it to people is, I used to think of my job a bit like this. So in the pharma industry, I was doing lots of kind of stats work. But does anyone know how long a drug takes to go from start to finish into market? 15 years, right? So if I mess something up on day one, right, and 15 years later a drug's released, I'm a long way away from that, right? So actually, I'm doing the analysis here, decisions get made over here somewhere, and the drug's over here. So I couldn't walk into my boss's office and go, look, I did this really cool work, and it made this really big impact here, and look, I should get a rise, right? Because that's what I wanted, so look, I'm making a difference here. And I used to talk to some of my friends from university who went to different industries, and I don't know where you are along this curve right now, but, marketing seemed a little bit closer maybe, and then insurance was kind of like, it was really regulatory based as well, a lot of it, so it was kind of a bit removed again. And then I had a lot of friends who kind of went into the quant world, and they were here. They were like, how are you doing this week? Oh, yeah, I had a bug in my code. I made a decision, lost £6 million. But it was all right, And you sit there going, wow, imagine that immediacy, right, of analytics, decision, impact, okay? And okay, I use a really bad example, right? But there can be good examples as well. I did something, we caught a percentage improvement there, we made a decision on the basis of that, and we made money. They can go into your boss's office at that point and go, we did this, we made money, hello, right? So this was interesting to me. And it was a million miles from where I was, I'll be honest. So for me, data science movement, a lot of the data science movement is down to moving from a reactive analytics perspective to a proactive. It's not analytics because you have to, or because we've done it that way. It's proactive because you're actually going to the business and saying, I can help you make better decisions. Let's do it, yeah? And all the pressures that come with that. So at Mango, we kind of been, for years, trying to develop, almost at the same time as the data science movement, a kind of, what was our ideal employee, okay? And so we came up with this. Again, lots of overlapping stuff, right? So someone who's good at communication, because if you don't have the communication bit, then you're essentially doing head down really cool stuff, but it's never going to make the company money. You're never going to engage, right, with the business side. Data wrangling, because you have to do that, it's a necessity. Programming, you've got to be a really good programmer, and the difference between hacking and writing good production code is vital to understand. Technologists, these days, I mentioned the Apache Incubator stuff, I'm not sure how many people use things like Spark and stuff like that, but every day at the moment I look at a blog post and go, oh, Apache Drill, never heard of it, but I better quickly get up to speed with that is, because it could add value to my business tomorrow. Yeah. Modeling, obviously, you need to be an analyst of some sort, and visualization as well is key to communicate clear concepts, as we've seen in some of the presentations today. So what we've done at Mango, and what we did at Mango a while ago, is we tried to actually turn this from an idea of an ideal person into something more quantitative. So essentially all we did is we took our nice Venn diagram type approach and we turned it into something called the data science radar, which is kind of what we've been using now for a few years at Mango to try and work out who is it that we need to employ next, frankly. Okay? So to give you an idea, this is actually my internal data science profile at Mango. Okay, so, and this is Pugh, this is not me, this is Piers saying this, right? So straight away you can see there's flaws in this, like there's no way I'm a better programmer than that, seriously, right? But you can kind of see that it's okay to be good at certain things and not so good at other things, because that's, that's fine. You've got to build a team around these people, right? So essentially you can see communication and Mark Strong, you might disagree after the presentation. Data wrangling, my SaaS background, I got a bit of that. Programming, thanks guys. Technology stuff, I'm always in blogs essentially. Modeling, I know my stats background and visualization. So that's kind of how we talk about internally what a data scientist is. We talk about them along these 6 different pillars essentially, okay? So what's this used for? Well, this is used at Mango, and it's used by our clients. So some of our clients, like Marks and Spencer, who are hiring right now, just for interest, and they kind of use it to define things like what skills do we have. So imagine you went around all your teams and you kind of had an audit of who you had in your team, right? You can kind of define who's there and therefore who's not there. So you can understand where the training needs are, or you can understand who you need to hire next. And we have conversations at Mango where they go, right, next hire in the data science team. It'd be good if we got a modeler versus it'd be good if we got a technologist next. And that's kind of the conversations we have. It's also very cool for building project teams where you need to cover off a lot of different skills in one team. And also, just the fact that we drew this, and I'm sure you're sitting there in your mind going, oh, you've completely messed that up. You've missed this pillar, or that's overrated, or something like that. That's great. That's the conversations that we like to have at Mango, is kind of arguments essentially about what should and should be on this radar. And that in itself is healthy, right? So this is where I lever in a Shiny app surreptitiously into this presentation. Okay, this is, if it's alive, okay, cool. So this is our internal Shiny app that we use in order to categorize different members of our team. Sorry, Amy, I will move from here in a second. There we go. So here's Ava. Ava's not here. We can talk about Ava. So Ava is, she's one of our data scientists. And to be honest, if I have a GLM question, if I have like a serious, what are my errors in a GLM question, I know who to turn to. And you might, if you've got a team around you, you might know already, oh yeah, if I had that question, I would go to that person, right? And it's important that you have that person in your team. So you can see, Ava's really strong on the modeling side. She's probably one of the best R programmers I've ever come across, actually. She's fantastic. But she, the communication side and technology side, maybe not as strong. And that's fine, right? And what we do internally is we do a lot of work where we'll look at not just the soft skills, but also the technical skills. And also we do things like self-assessment. So if I click this self-assessment thing, you can see that what our data scientists also do is they'll actually self-assess. And that was really useful to be able to say, okay, well, I think I'm like a better programmer than they are. Maybe I'm a bit more of a technologist. And that's really nice because it gives us a focus for where they want to focus on and so on. But the mistake here is to go, oh, Ava, maybe weakest pillar is communication. I'm going to turn Ava into a communicator. She'd leave. The last thing I want to do is take Ava, who is so good at programming, who's such a good modeler, and say, no, you've got to go and do presentation skills and stuff like that, because she doesn't want to, right? So, and that's fine. And I suppose that's kind of the message here, is that we're all kind of different types of data scientists, and that is cool. Let me give you an extreme example. Check who's in the room. Right, okay. So here's Mark. Mark is he's a data scientist, but he's very much a technologist. Mark came from an IT background. Really important person in our team, because Mark's the person I turn to and go, Mark, I've done this, now I want to do it really big. And he will get a big server, or he'll deploy it on the cloud, or he'll mix it with Spark, or he'll give me a connection to a database, and it'll all go much faster than it did before, right? Really important to have these IT kind of types embedded or around your team, as opposed to having them in a different team who say no a lot, right? That's kind of what I see. So here's Mark, and that's kind of how we work at Mango, right? There we go. Seamless, right? Lever it in Shiny apps, and yeah, okay. Anyway, I'll talk a bit more about the data science types, and in particular something called the unicorn. Now, has everyone heard the phrase the unicorn around data science? Okay, for years at Mango, we've been interviewing people, and we've been looking for the unicorn. The unicorn essentially is this person. Okay, this is the unicorn. So just very quickly to point this out, we've been interviewing people for 13 years. This person doesn't exist. If they do exist, by the way, we are hiring too. So yeah, come on, tell me. No, this person, I think actually this person is almost designed not to exist. I'm not sure you can be a really, really strong, like, I want to know about your business model thing, and at the same time be like a really serious, like, PhD level statistician. So maybe the person isn't designed to exist, essentially, right? But what we found out over the years is we can build this person. So we might not have this person, or might be able to find this person, but we can build the person. And building the unicorn, I think, is an important part of team analytics going forward. Now, collaborative analytics itself is difficult, right? Because essentially you've got to learn as a team. It's not like you've got to write software as a team when it's all got to work together. Analytics is, is a learning process. How do you learn in a team? And that's quite difficult, right? So collaborative analytics becomes more and more important, especially those moments if we are going to be right at the forefront and making decisions. We can't have that thing where you go, right, we need to make that decision. Where's Ben? Oh, he's off skiing this week. Yeah, but I need to make a decision. You can't do that. If we're going to make big promises as data scientists, right, you can't then not have that happen. So working together as teams becomes more and more important, basically, okay? So what we do at Mango, again, is if we've got a project coming along, what we do is we actually define data science teams. And the way we do that is we take people who've got, different profiles. So again, I'll start with Ava, okay? So Ava's got this sort of profile. If I wanted to make a fully rounded unicorn, a fully rounded team, what I might do is combine Ava with someone. Hannah, for example. Hannah's a really good communicator. If you've met Hannah, she's really good at understanding what you're trying to do, understanding why, understanding the business, and so on. Okay? And we might put that person together with, if you've met Lewis, for example, right? Now, individually, these people are not unicorns, because I've said these people don't exist, right? But actually, collectively, they can cover off all the skills that you need in a data science team. And certain teams will need different things. So if you do a very graphical project, I might double up on the real visualizers there in that team. And essentially what I mean by that is if you click on one of these people, you see Mark is a technologist. And if you, for example, choose, I don't know who else, Pauline is a visualizer in our team, right? So you can kind of get these strengths and kind of go, okay, well, I'll put you in with you, and that will form a really cool team. So we can build unicorns, which really, really helps us. Okay, in amongst that, like I say, I've levered in some shiny stuff that I want to talk about. I can talk about data science till the cows come home, as you could probably imagine. But in terms of the technology behind it, I started off it's probably about 6 months ago, I built an app to do this, and it was in Shiny, and I thought this is way cool. But essentially, the graphics I was using were just base graphics. So you can see on the left, basically, my model was I've got R, Shiny, and you can kind of drop down the person and draw these things, right? And it was okay. But then I came across something called ChartJS, okay, which is a JavaScript library. Now, on Twitter when someone says, oh, look at this really cool visualization of something, and you click on it and you go, wow, that's really cool. I really like that. Hover over, point, click. Wow, that's cool. Right? This was one of them. And what it had in amongst it was this, which is a radar chart, okay? So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could somehow get this JavaScript visualization library, but drive it using R? And the good news, of course, is you can. There's this thing called HTML widgets. Anyone come across HTML widgets? Quick show of hands. People? Cool, okay. HTML widgets is a package that allows us to literally tie together a JavaScript visualization library with R. So what you basically do is you go online, you find a cool visualization, you can build an R interface to that visualization, so I can actually drive it and generate it from within R. So this stuff you're seeing in this place, right, this kind of interactive stuff here that seems to build when you choose it, right? So, okay, this stuff actually builds from R, but I'm passing the data through to a JavaScript library that I did not write, and so on. So it's kind of cool. It was created by a lot of people, including Joe, if he's here, and a few others. And it also embeds in things like Shiny, as I'm showing, but also Markdown and stuff like that. So really, really cool. And the way you build one of these things is actually, I've seen it happen, is quite simple. Now, before I do anything else, does anyone else know who this character is? Am I the only person in the room? Oh, this is Dougie, right? Anyone watches CBeebies right now, like I do a lot. This is a cartoon character. It's a very good cartoon. You should check it out. But we actually have a Dougie in the office, and he's sat in the front row here. So I can't really kind of take any credit beyond just some of the basics for this, because Doug built this this widget for me. And I think what it showed is that I kind of half got there by knowing a bit of R. But about 3 weeks ago, I was Googling things like introduction to JavaScript. It's not where you want to be 3 weeks ago. So having people around you who know a bit of JavaScript, it just really helps you. But essentially what you do is you go onto this thing called bower.io, which has got a lot of these visualization libraries. You choose the one you want. Then you run a function called scaffold widget in the HTML widget library, which kind of sets up the infrastructure to do this. And then you go in and essentially edit the R, and you've got to write a little bit of JavaScript, like what, 5 lines, Doug, something like that? So a really tiny amount of JavaScript. But then you can just drive any widget like this. So now my version looks a bit like this. Shiny is obviously the front end. ChartJS is the JavaScript library for this. I use HTML widgets and this radar chart thing, which is on our GitHub page soon. And I also use a little library called ShinyBS, honestly, and which does the buttons. So you see these little buttons here, like clicky off and on buttons. That ShinyBS gives you that, and it gives you a couple of things like tooltips and stuff, which is quite cool. In terms of where we are right now, the ChartJS library, the package I'm using, the JavaScript one, has other stuff like it has some donut charts, it has some line plots, polar charts and stuff like that that you can also, in a few quick steps, drive directly from R. So what we're going to probably do, I mean Doug. What Doug is going to do is carry on and embed some of this JavaScript stuff in our R library, so you can actually then, and literally you just install it as an R library, type code, and it renders either in a Shiny app or in that viewer window. Really cool to use. Nice and interactive. So look for that coming on our GitHub page soon. We're also working with widgets more and more. So the idea that I can actually build something like this that's interactive and cool and sexy in like no time essentially, and go and put it in front of someone and go, hey, look, there's a portal for doing data analytics stuff with interactive stuff as well. That's kind of cool. And the idea that I cannot start from what I can do, but start with what JavaScript libraries are out there and work backwards from there is nice as well. So yeah, we're using it more and more, the widgets, in our consulting and app dev work. And also, I did not, and I've really messed this up, I did not do this, but essentially there's a website coming very, very soon called datascienceradar.com. And what it is, it's got a big button on it called Create Your Own Radar. And basically all it does is it steps you through a series of questions, and at the end, it draws this radar, and then you can do things like download it, store it, and stuff like that. So we do things like, when people come to Mango for interview, we'll say, right, before you come, fill this thing in. I just want to see what you feel, where your strengths are across this radar, and stuff like that. So that kind of is coming soon as a website that I'm sure you'll hear about in the next couple of months. Okay. There we go. So a couple of thank yous then. Very much thank you to Doug. As you can imagine, I was a bit stuck without Doug doing this. Thank you to people like all the guys who invented HTML widgets, and of course the RStudio team for Shiny. And if you've got any questions, then happy to answer them.